So first of all, thank you for inviting us, for inviting EFSA to this conference. I'm Tassini. I work in the engagement unit, and I'm here today to guide you through our community management strategies. We would like to see what's the role of communities in facilitating engagement and collaboration among scientists, to give you this as a glimpse, as an opportunity for you also to think about the future engagement in scientific topics. Just a look at our agenda for today. In our presentation, I will guide you through a brief introduction to the topic. Then we would like to give you some examples, concrete examples on EFSA communities and how we use community management in our organization to foster scientific work. We will then dive into how communities can facilitate engagement and collaboration in science, and close with a list of pros and cons of community management that you can bring home as a reflection, whether you would like to set up scientific communities, for example. So why are we here today? Why is community management important for science? Where can actually community management support scientific work? To reply to this question, we need to place community management in the bigger picture. So to ask ourselves, why engagement, first of all? What we like to say in EFSA is that science is not impactful without engagement. We are currently faced with complexity, a lot of complexity in terms of actors. We have local, national, European, and international actors that we need to deal with, but also complexity of topics, new technologies, new methodologies, also collection of data exchange. So we need to face the fact that engagement can be an enabler for the quality of EFSA scientific work, also for our reputation, but in terms of risk assessment to ensure preparedness for the challenges ahead. So community management can be seen as one engagement strategy that enable EFSA, in this case, to bring people together around the same table with different backgrounds, with different scientific expertise, with different experiences and knowledge, to face this complexity. Because what is clear by now is that we cannot face the world in front of us all alone. And that's something that I think is very valid for any scientific organization. So communities are important because they bring several kind of benefits. They ensure alignment between scientific expertise and methodologies. They ensure the possibility to share experience among scientists, but also to amplify scientific impact or scientific output by being able to disseminate the scientific outputs at a larger and a broader spectrum. It could create a form of engagement, a forum for exchanging and for being able to build trust as well. And finally, it's a great opportunity to create a support system. So communities are a form of group where people can actually feel they belong to, feel they are listened to, and they can actually support each other whenever they face an issue. So community management is actually a great tool to bring added value through collaboration and knowledge sharing, as a way to engage with different kinds of stakeholders, from companies, NGOs, advocacy groups, citizens, and different scientists. Build also an organizational culture and employee engagement, because we need to think about community management as a sort of engagement that you can create also in-house within your organizations. We have that in EFSA. We will also show you later and mention it. We have internal communities, so group of people that share some aspects in common. It could be their role, for example, the community of team leaders, or it could be their background. It could be their experience, for example, the community on internal communications experts. As I said, it also is a way to amplify the scientific impact by being able to disseminate the outputs you are creating at a broader and also in a faster way, I must say, to the European community. It could be a way to manage crisis and be prepared for rapid response to crisis. And it's a way to look into innovation, especially technologies, new tools, new systems, new integrations, and share best practices on how to use them, because this is also something that we are facing in-house. We have a widespread use of different systems and tools, and we also need to learn from others how to best use them. And finally, and that I think is very important, communities are very effective in building trust. It's a really natural way to create connections among members, among the participants of the community, to create a sense of trust where people are then able to share much more that they would share without a community being in place. And now we will move fast forward to the EFSA community. So we wanted to give you some, let's say, concrete examples on how we use community management in EFSA for our scientific work. And I'm going to show you some very effective communities that we have been running since 2002. So EFSA has more than 20 years of experience eventually in running communities. You know, I guess, many of them from the advisory forum, the focal points, but also our scientific networks. So you see also the diversity of communities that can be created. Some of them are more institutional, some of them more political, while others are purely scientific. We also identified what is actually the definition of a community in our case. So they are formal or informal structure, but what is important is that they share a common purpose and vision, and they work better together by collaborating regularly. They manage to achieve a better impact also in their scientific work. To give you concrete examples on purely scientific communities, we have our scientific networks. You know that EFSA counts currently more than 12 networks that span from very different topics, from GMOs to plant pest surveillance and more. But what is the core objective of all of them? That they support EFSA work and the member states in carrying out our mission. So since the beginning, EFSA understood that the best way to ensure scientific impact and ensure also the quality of our scientific work was create groups, create communities around certain topics and work together. So they facilitate the development of scientific cooperation, they coordinate the different activities by exchanging information, working on scientific outputs together, and sometimes they also launch joint projects that they work on for a fixed period of time. And they do that by regular meetings, by exchange regular documentations and information, but also by keeping constant exchange channel where the community manager, which is the function we have in EFSA as the coordinator of this of the community, in this case the network coordinator, has a very important role of facilitating the discussion and moderating the group in setting up activities and also possibly allocating tasks. Very similar communities is our communication expert network. This is another example of network, but focus on communication, on risk communication, which is of course one of EFSA remit. But it's very important that we are capitalizing on this network of communication experts across member states to perform actually our activity in an effective way. So we try to create seamless cooperation and coordinated communication across the EU when we are communicating about EFSA activities, and also, of course, in topics such as the African swine fever, for example. So very sensitive and urgent topic that we need to deal with. We share best practices and guidelines in communications. So we use the same style and the same approach towards European citizens when we are communicating to them. And these guidelines, this is also very important, are not top down, but they're actually created by harnesses from the collective experience. So we really listen to what our communication experts in the different member states are dealing with, what is their experience, what could be done better, and we try to, based on that, create harmonized guidelines for communications. And it's also, of course, a great tool to improve skills as well and create a knowledge development across member states. So here you have several examples, a big picture of different campaigns that we run over the last few years. I guess you might be familiar with some of these. One of these is the Stop African Swine Fever, which was carried out again in 2023 in more than 18 countries. So this makes very clear how much this community is important, because reaching 18 countries would be impossible for EFSA itself. One thing, for example, very clearly is just multilingualism. So translating the different campaigns in the different national languages. This is something that these kind of networks, these kind of communities help EFSA with. And finally, we look into how communities can actually facilitate engagement and collaboration among scientists. What is important to understand is that community management itself, it's a cycle. So from shaping, creating a community, we then move into running it, but we need also then to keep nurturing it, because communities as usually a fixed length, but it's a length in terms of years. So throughout the years, which could be 2, 3, but we reach 20 years, as you could see from the network's example. Throughout the years, we need to be able to nurture the community, to keep it alive, and especially to keep it prepared and relevant for the world in which it's working. And one important element is also keeping monitoring and reporting on the activities and the impact of the community, because that's what makes us understand at the end of the cycle whether the community should be discontinued or if it should continue, but maybe in a different way or in a different format. So it's also important that when we set up a community, we don't give for granted that the community would stay as such forever, because member can change, the objective of the community can change. And as I said, going back to the complexity of our ecosystem, the world in front of us will change. So we are now looking into the running and nurturing of the community. We're not focusing on the shaping just for the purpose of this very brief presentation, even though that I must say it's a very important step when you decide that you want to use community management as a form of engagement. You need to shape your community having clear objectives and visions. But moving into the running, What is important to understand is that in addition to the vision and the organization that you need to have, we usually suggest to have a work plan for the community, for example. uh, Empathy is also an element that is very relevant. I mentioned before the role of the community manager. He's the coordinator of the community, the person responsible for managing the community. And his role, heavy empathy, is very important because we need to understand that communities are based on people, members. So members need to feel welcome, feel appreciated, feel that their work is valued, that their effort is considered. And this is a very soft skill, but very much important because when we talk about communities. And through these, we can actually motivate members and stimulate their engagement, their participation in the community works. What we always suggest our community manager is to be as transparent, as open as possible, because this will help other members to behave in the same way. It's important that you know the members of your community so that you are able to engage with them in a targeted way, trigger their attention based on their interest, on their topic that they deal with, and also foster their motivation through the culture of recognition and appreciation. Each achievement of the members, each contribution should not be given for granted in a community, but should be recognized by the community manager, but possibly by the other community members as well. Stimulate engagement is also done through sharing content and interesting information. This is a way to regularly engage with members through novelties, new issues, new articles, new topics that are of interest for the objectives of the community should be constantly shared on a regular basis with the community members to hook their attention. And finally, engage in informal discussion. Communities are seen as a very, sometimes in us as well, as a very formal way to group people, but we need to allow time for uh, sharing informal discussion in between meetings, because these would leverage on what we call the sympathy capital. So going back also to empathy and transparency and trust, this actually is what makes a community feeling as such, and not simply as a group working together. And then, as I mentioned, nurturing is a constant element on when you're managing a community. This is what fosters the sense of belonging, or what we call also the sense of community among participants. So, as I mentioned, participants need to feel attached to their community in order to be as engaged as possible. And doing that will allow the community to remain relevant throughout the years, to keep innovate, keep up to date with the latest scientific developments, will be able to communicate effectively within the community, but then eventually also outside the community. Having motivated members can, of course, stimulate engagement, and then finally create an inclusive space where everyone feels they're welcome and they are listened to. And that's when actually the sharing of information happens. So members need to be encouraged to collaborate among each other. And that's also not a very easy task at the beginning, especially when you're setting up a community from scratch and the members do not know each other, they do not trust each other, they don't know the background or the expertise of the other members. So again, it comes back to the role of the community manager as facilitator of exchanges and conversations also through informal meetings, as we said. Foster interactions also through different kind of communication. It could be newsletters, email alerts, social media, or different kind of Teams group. And also, what we always suggest our community managers is to create considering some subgroups, some restricted groups, either dealing with specific subtopics of the community or to support the community manager himself in running the communities. And one important element to stay relevant, to keep your members engaged, is to select topics that actually appeal to your members. If the community is discussing themes and topics that are irrelevant, that are not considered important by the members, there's no way members will be engaged and collaborate. And to do that, we would suggest that you actually listen actively to your members and collect input and topics from them. Sometimes it's also important to look outside of the community, look at external expertise. So even if they are not members of the community, you can consider inviting other scientific experts, for example, in some of your meetings, or to deliver speech, or to moderate one workshop or interactions. And ensure that you have in place a feedback mechanism, because this is a way that you manage your members in an effective way by collecting their feedback, storing their feedback, and eventually implement their feedback. So you can report back to your community members and participants, showing actually that their feedback and their role is very much valued. And first thing, of course, is always to be active, to be proactive in sharing knowledge and expertise, to be able, as a community manager yourself, to be the driver of sharing expertise, and so leading by example. And finally, having provided you with a glimpse of what community management is and what also entails in terms of efforts in setting up, running, and then nurturing a community, we would like just to wrap up with a list of pros and cons of community management that you could bring home if you're thinking of using community management as a form of engagement in your scientific work. You need to consider, of course, what are also the downsides of community management. The first one is, of course, time and efforts, because running as a community is a constant effort in terms of resources, in terms of time allocated, because you would need to sustain, to facilitate, to moderate the community for a certain period of time, which as I said, could be years. So it requires a lot of moderation, okay? And it requires also from the beginning a clear strategy. So you need to dedicate some time in setting the objective, the vision, and also the tools you will be using in managing the community from the beginning. So this is a reflection time that you would need to make into before actually thinking of shaping a community. And finally, unfortunately, at the end, it's very difficult to measure the return on investment. So we tend to say that we know it's effective. We have some KPIs, we have some impact analysis, but it's very difficult sometimes to justify how a certain scientific community eventually managed to bring impact to EFSA risk assessment work. It's very complex and challenging, but we think it's worth it. On the other side, you have the pros I mentioned. It's a very also easy and informal and natural way to connect through scientists, to share experience, co-create together, to break boundaries in terms of disciplines, in terms of geography, in terms of organizations, in terms of different expertise and backgrounds. So it really encourages diverse collaboration, okay? and it builds on relationship, and that's very human, no? So to build trust and long-term collaboration, you really need informal interactions. And it's a way to promote innovation very often, because we see that in our case, there are organizations that might be much ahead in some methodologies, in some techniques. They share this information within a community, and they promote innovation across all the other members of the same communities who might decide to adopt the same solution, the same methodology, the same tool. And finally, in our case, we find it very important to improve reputation through trust and credibility. So this is a way, in our case, for EFSA to reach the different member states in a very impactful way, to ensure that our reputation is considered, and that we are perceived by the member states in a positive way, because they understand that we work together for the same objective. And having said that, I just close on this positive note my presentation. I hope this provided you with a glimpse of the community management approach, and you could bring home some ideas maybe on how to implement it within your organization. And I now leave the floor for questions, if any. Thank you.